I had been working at Hartwell Finance for just under 6 months, still the new girl, still someone whose presence seemed like a minor ripple in a vast ocean of suits and titles. My office space was a small cubicle with high, gray partitions that absorbed sound, giving the illusion of privacy, but the constant hum of conversation, the clatter of keyboards, the occasional sharp laugh reminded me that I was never alone. The air smelled faintly of polished wood from the conference rooms, mingled with the bitterness of coffee and the faint antiseptic scent from the cleaning staff, the kind of mixture that should comfort, but today only heightened my anxiety. I sipped my morning coffee, the dark liquid grounding me with its familiar bitterness, each swallow steadying the tremor that had begun in my fingertips. Today was the quarterly financial review, a meeting that decided the trajectory of projects, budgets, and by extension, my reputation. My prepared notes sat in a neat stack beside my laptop, highlighted with neon markers, meticulously numbered, every fact double-checked. The corridor leading to the conference room stretched long and polished, the light bouncing off the marble floor, casting faint reflections of my own figure. My heels clicked rhythmically, a sound that seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet morning air. I could feel every heartbeat, every pulse, my nerves vibrating against my ribs. The conference room loomed ahead, a vast space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city below. Glass walls reflected the rising sun, painting the polished oak table with streaks of golden light. Chairs were perfectly aligned, as if anticipating the exact number of occupants, the weight of their importance palpable. Executives were already gathered, the air heavy with authority and expectation. Mr. Caldwell, the CFO, a man whose presence was both magnetic and intimidating, sat at the head of the table. His silver hair glinted under the sunlight, neatly combed back, framing a face that had been carved by discipline and hardened by decades of negotiation. His sharp navy suit hugged his broad shoulders, tailored to perfection, each movement deliberate. Beside him sat Ms. Reynolds, VP of Operations, petite but with a penetrating gaze that seemed to dissect anyone she looked at, her red heels tapping lightly against the floor as she reviewed her notes. Other senior staff hovered like predatory birds, their eyes flicking towards me as I approached, assessing, calculating, weighing whether I was worthy of their notice. You belong here. You prepared. You know the numbers. Just ask the question, I told myself, the internal mantra clashing with the flutter of anxiety in my stomach. As I entered, the click of the door seemed to echo like a gunshot. Conversations hushed, all eyes settling on me. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, my palms sweating as I carried my laptop and notes to my designated seat. Each step felt like wading through a current of invisible judgment. I set down my materials with deliberate care, fingers brushing the cold, polished surface of the table. The touch grounded me, connected me to reality, but it did little to quell the storm of nerves that churned in my chest. I opened my mouth. Excuse me, my voice steady yet undercut with a tremor of anticipation. I noticed a discrepancy in the quarterly report regarding asset allocations. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, the weight of expectation pressing down, almost physically, against my shoulders. Mr. Caldwell's gaze, sharp and cold, dropped to me like a steel blade. "Is this your question?" he said, his voice dripping with condescension, each syllable a calculated sting. "Do you really think you can lecture us on finances?" A ripple of laughter, quiet but sharp, ran through the room. Ms. Reynolds's eyes glimmered with something between amusement and judgment. Others smirked, exchanging looks that screamed silent mockery. "Stay calm. Breathe. Don't let them see you falter," I told myself, gripping the edge of the table, feeling the smooth, solid wood beneath my fingers, the tactile reassurance anchoring me. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, a drum of defiance and fear intertwined. He leaned back, his chair creaking, a deliberate gesture of dominance. "You're brave, I'll give you that," he said, voice sharp, a faint smile playing at the corner of his lips. "But bravery isn't a substitute for experience. Keep your observations to yourself." His tone was velvet wrapped around steel, soft but cutting. I could feel my throat tighten, my lungs constricted by the sudden surge of heat in my chest. The bitterness of coffee lingered metallically on my tongue, my stomach twisting. Do I respond? Do I back down? The room seemed to tilt, the light bouncing off the glossy table blinding for a moment. I looked around, catching the subtle gestures of my colleagues, a hand smoothing down a suit jacket, a foot tapping lightly, eyes flicking between me and Mr. Caldwell. Each movement seemed to scream superiority, a silent orchestration to remind me of my perceived inferiority. The room had transformed into a stage, and I, the interloper, was the subject of scrutiny. And yet, beneath the fear, a spark ignited. My fingers, still resting against the polished wood, twitched with a need to assert myself. My lips pressed into a thin line, jaw tightening. I will not leave this room defeated. I will not let them humiliate me into silence. I opened my mouth again, this time the words sharper, deliberate. I understand your point, Mr. Caldwell. But if I may, even small discrepancies can cascade into significant risks for the company. The silence that followed was heavy, almost tangible. Every eye measured me, tested me, and for a brief second, I felt the pulse of control shifting, not entirely, but just enough. The meeting continued, the executives diving into numbers and projections, but my attention sharpened. Each spreadsheet became a potential revelation, each financial footnote a key to leverage. I could feel the tension in my body, a coiled wire of adrenaline and fear, yet also determination. Every breath was measured, my posture straight, shoulders back, a silent assertion that I would not be broken. As the discussion progressed, I traced the figures on my laptop screen, tapping a pen against the polished table. My mind raced through calculations, possibilities, and contingencies. I could feel the warmth of the sunlight on my skin, the subtle vibration of the conference table as colleagues shifted, the faint scent of expensive perfume mingling with the coffee. Each sensation heightened my awareness, every detail a thread in the web of the unfolding narrative. And in that precise moment, I realized something profound. Humiliation was temporary, but insight, courage, and action, these were lasting. I would not just survive this meeting. I would extract from it the knowledge and the leverage I needed to turn even a moment of derision into the first step toward revelation. The meeting had ended hours ago, but I couldn't shake the tension that clung to my shoulders like a second skin. My fingers still tingled from gripping the edge of the conference table, my palms slightly damp despite the afternoon chill in the office. I returned to my desk, the hum of computers and faint murmur of colleagues unable to dispel the aftertaste of humiliation, and yet beneath it all, a spark of resolve burned quietly. I opened my laptop, staring at the spreadsheet I had brought with me. The numbers glared back, orderly in their columns, yet something in the asset allocations nagged at me. A minor discrepancy, so small that anyone else might dismiss it, had lodged in my mind during the meeting. But the subtle tug of curiosity refused to be ignored. I traced the figures line by line, fingers hovering above the keyboard, the soft click of keys punctuating the silence of my cubicle. It doesn't make sense. The thought repeated like a drumbeat in my skull. Accounts were out of balance. Transfers that should have been transparent were obscured in vague descriptions, funds moving in patterns that suggested careful orchestration. My heart began to quicken, a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through me. I felt my chest tighten, a pressure that was equal parts adrenaline and anxiety. The office seemed to shrink around me, the fluorescent lights overhead buzzing faintly, the hum of the air conditioning suddenly oppressive. I leaned back in my chair, hands brushing against the cool leather armrests, grounding myself in the tactile sensation. My eyes scanned each figure again, each decimal point, each annotation. Then I saw it. A series of small, repeated transfers that didn't belong, each one seemingly innocuous on its own, but together forming a pattern. I felt a shiver run down my spine, goosebumps rising along my arms. This isn't an accident. The realization struck me with the weight of a hammer. My pulse raced, my fingers trembling slightly as I opened a separate document to trace the movements further. The numbers told a story that the executives had chosen to ignore, or perhaps had deliberately obscured. Each transaction was deliberate, calculated. Someone was siphoning funds, hiding the trail, manipulating the books. My mind whirled. The humiliation from earlier faded into the background, replaced by a surge of purpose. I could feel my shoulders straighten, a tangible sense of power settling in the small of my back. My breathing deepened, and each inhale seemed to fill my lungs with clarity, washing away the lingering sting of derision. I leaned forward, fingers flying across the keyboard, cross-referencing accounts, dates, and amounts. Each correct calculation made my heartbeat quicken, the rhythmic tapping against the keys almost musical, a cadence of discovery. I could hear my own breath, steady but intense, each exhale a release of tension. I caught the faint scent of coffee lingering on my desk, bitter and grounding, and the distant murmur of colleagues felt like a world away. Minutes stretched into hours, yet I barely noticed the passage of time. The office had emptied gradually, the corridors now silent except for the occasional shuffle of a janitor's broom. My screen glowed with a harsh clarity of truth. The anomaly was not minor, it was massive. A network of hidden accounts, offshore transfers, and concealed profits pointed to a financial scandal of staggering scale. I leaned back again, pressing my forehead to my palm, the weight of the revelation pressing against my chest. I could feel the cool metal of my ring against my skin, the texture grounding me as I considered the implications. If I report this, everything changes. But if I stay silent, I become complicit. The dichotomy pressed against me like the walls of a cage, yet also sparked a resolve that I had not known I possessed. The sound of footsteps startled me, and I quickly minimized the spreadsheets, heart thudding in my chest. It was just Mr. Lee, a colleague from accounting, returning to retrieve some forgotten files. He glanced at me, raising an eyebrow, but didn't comment on my absorbed focus. I could feel the heat rise to my cheeks as I straightened, offering a polite smile. Not yet, not now. I need time. I returned to the spreadsheets once he left, tracing the connections again. Each revelation brought new physical sensations. A tightening of my stomach, the buzzing energy in my fingertips, the faint tremor in my jaw. I realized that I was standing at a crossroads, each choice laden with consequence. My inner voice, the quiet, insistent part of me that had been drowned out by fear before, now spoke with clarity. You cannot ignore this. You have to act. The thought of confronting the executives, especially those who had mocked me, sent a shiver down my spine. I could almost feel the judgmental eyes, the laughter, the sneer of Mr. Caldwell as I had asked my question earlier. My palms grew clammy at the memory, yet beneath the fear, a surge of determination flared. I could visualize the faces of those responsible, their gestures, their expressions, each one a puzzle piece in the mosaic of corruption. By the time I finally shut down my laptop, the office lights were dim, and the corridors were bathed in the quiet glow of evening. The city outside shimmered with reflected sunlight, distant car horns punctuating the stillness. I stretched, feeling the stiffness in my shoulders, the twinge in my lower back, the lingering tremor in my fingers. This is bigger than me, yet it starts with me. I left the office that evening carrying the weight of discovery, my bag heavier somehow, as if burdened by the truth I now held. Each step down the marble staircase resonated through my body, echoing in rhythm with the rapid beat of my heart. The cool air outside was a balm against the heat of the office, brushing against my cheeks and arms, reminding me that the world continued, oblivious to the storm I had uncovered. And as I walked toward the elevator, a quiet, fierce thought settled in my mind, palpable as the leather strap of my bag against my shoulder. I will uncover the full story. I will not be silenced. And I will expose the truth, no matter the cost. The evening air outside the office building was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain that had fallen hours earlier. The streets glimmered under the reflections of streetlights and neon signs, puddles rippling slightly as cars passed. I walked briskly, the heels of my shoes clicking against the wet pavement, each step punctuated by the rhythm of my rising pulse. My mind was a storm of calculations and possibilities. I had uncovered something enormous, but how did one person, a secretary barely 3 months into the company, act on a discovery this vast without being immediately crushed by the weight of authority? The apartment I rented was modest, but tonight it felt like a sanctuary. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the soft flicker of my desk lamp, the scattered papers around my workstation, these ordinary details grounded me. I sank into my chair, feeling the worn leather mold to my body, and opened my laptop again. The spreadsheet glowed with familiar numbers, but now they took on a new life, each entry whispering secrets. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, absorbing the tactile sensation of the keys beneath my fingertips, the slight vibration of the laptop fan humming softly against my palm. I took a deep breath, letting the cool air of the room fill my lungs. Okay, I told myself, the thought deliberate, measured, first, confirm the irregularities, then plan, and never, ever let anyone know what you've seen until you're ready. My mind raced through possible allies and the risks of exposure. Every minor detail of my day, every interaction in the office, replayed in my mind with a sharper focus. The way Mr. Caldwell had smiled when I asked my question, the subtle roll of Ms. Reynolds's eyes, the almost imperceptible smirk exchanged among senior staff, all now indicators of a deeper system of deception. I began by tracing the suspicious transactions, pulling out supporting documents from shared drives, scanning emails and internal memos. Each discovery was both exhilarating and terrifying. My stomach tightened with each piece of evidence, the physical sensation of tension and anticipation coiling through me like a live wire. The faint hum of the air conditioning seemed louder now, punctuating each realization, each small revelation. This is real. This is happening. Hours passed. My shoulders stiffened. My neck ached. My fingers tingled from continuous typing. Yet the excitement overshadowed discomfort. There was an intoxicating clarity in the pursuit of truth. I was acutely aware of my heartbeat, each thrum resonating in my ears, a drum marking the rhythm of a battle I had not yet fully committed to. The documents painted a picture of collusion, of offshore accounts, of money moved in ways that could not be justified in legitimate business terms. It was a delicate labyrinth, and I alone held the thread. By late evening, I realized that to act, I needed someone outside the immediate sphere of influence. My mind wandered to Lydia, an old college friend who had recently begun working in forensic auditing. Her meticulous attention to detail and unwavering ethical standards made her the perfect ally. I hesitated, feeling a lump of fear twist in my stomach. Do I trust her with this? Could it put her in danger? My fingers drummed against the laptop, the leather of my chair pressing against my thighs, the tension in my body mirrored in the tightness of my jaw. I typed a brief message, deleting it twice before sending. Lydia, I need your help. It's urgent. Confidential. My heart leapt as I hit send. The glow of the screen reflected in my wide eyes, a mixture of apprehension and hope. The wait for her response was excruciating, each passing second stretching out painfully. I could feel the vibration of my phone against the desk. Each subtle buzz making me jump slightly, anticipation knotting my stomach tighter. When Lydia finally replied, her words were brief but resolute. I'll come by. Bring everything you have. Relief washed over me, but it was tempered by a new wave of anxiety. This was no longer a solitary puzzle. Now someone else would see what I had uncovered. The weight of responsibility shifted, multiplying the stakes. The next morning, we met in a small, nondescript cafe, the smell of roasted coffee beans and warm pastries filling the air. I had brought printed documents, spreadsheets, and copies of internal emails, each carefully organized. Lydia arrived promptly, her presence a stabilizing force. She was tall, with sharp features and piercing green eyes, her hair pulled back into a tight ponytail that gave her an aura of control and efficiency. Her hands moved swiftly as she began sorting through the materials, her touch precise and deliberate. As we worked, I felt the physical connection to my investigation deepen. Each sheet of paper was textured, the crisp sound of printing a stark contrast to the silent, digital trail I had followed alone. The smell of ink and paper grounded me, the tactile engagement amplifying my focus. My palms occasionally brushed against Lydia's as we handed documents back and forth, sending subtle shocks of awareness up my arms, a reminder of the human element in what had begun as a purely numerical investigation. Hours slipped by unnoticed. Each revelation we uncovered together added weight to the enormity of the scandal. The network of hidden transactions was more extensive than I had initially feared. Offshore accounts, shell companies, and unauthorized transfers pointed to deliberate malfeasance at the highest levels of the organization. My stomach twisted in a mixture of dread and excitement, the sensation sharp and visceral, as if the truth itself had physical form pressing against my ribs. I looked up from the documents for a brief moment and caught my reflection in the cafe window. My hair was slightly disheveled, my cheeks flushed from concentration, but my eyes were alight with determination. Every nerve in my body felt heightened, the world around me sharper, more immediate. I realized then that fear and courage were not opposites but companions, each feeding the other in a symbiotic dance. By the time we parted, the sun had begun its descent, casting warm golden light across the streets. Lydia's parting words were simple but resolute. We need a plan. Carefully. No mistakes. I nodded, feeling the weight of her trust and the gravity of the next steps. As I walked back to my apartment, the city seemed different, more vivid, more alive, yet tinged with the underlying tension of secrets waiting to be revealed. That night, I lay in bed, the sheets twisted around my legs, fingers tracing the fabric as if seeking reassurance. My mind replayed every number, every email, every subtle smirk and gesture from the office. I could feel the tension in my chest, the adrenaline still humming faintly in my veins, and yet beneath it all, a quiet, fierce determination persisted. I cannot ignore this. I will uncover the truth, no matter what it costs. The following morning, the office felt different. The hum of computers, the muted chatter of colleagues, even the faint aroma of coffee brewing in the corner kitchenette seemed loaded with tension. I arrived early, the soft click of my heels on the polished floor echoing through the empty corridors, each step resonating in my chest. My hands were steady but tense, the cool weight of my laptop bag pressing against my shoulder, grounding me in the physicality of the moment. I headed straight to my desk, avoiding the main floor where most of the staff had already gathered. As I settled into my chair, I noticed the subtle shift in the air, the sideways glances, the quiet whispers that stopped when I looked toward them. My pulse quickened. They suspect something, I thought, the tension coiling through my spine and along my shoulders. I could feel the hairs on my arms prickling as my instincts sharpened. Lydia had sent me a message overnight, confirming the next steps. Cross-reference every suspicious transaction, identify internal contacts, and document every anomaly meticulously. The plan was simple in theory, dangerous in practice. One wrong move, and they could terminate me before the evidence sees daylight. The pressure pressed against my chest like a physical weight, my breath shallow and deliberate as I opened the encrypted folder on my laptop. I began my methodical search. Each document, each ledger entry, each email snippet revealed the complex web of manipulation. Transfers had been timed to coincide with quarterly audits, hidden within layers of plausible accounting maneuvers. I felt a tingle in my fingertips, the tactile sensation of scrolling and typing amplifying my focus, almost as if my body itself was attuned to the rhythm of discovery. Suddenly, a shadow fell over my desk. I looked up to see Mr. Caldwell, the senior executive who had derided me during the earlier incident, his expression carefully neutral but his eyes sharp, probing. The faintest smirk tugged at his lips. "Burning the midnight oil again, I see," he said smoothly. His voice carried the subtle thread of authority, the weight of years in the company. I felt a shiver ripple down my spine but forced a controlled smile. "Yes, Mr. Caldwell," I said, voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline in my veins. I like to stay ahead of deadlines. My hands, resting on the laptop, were not shaking, but the tight grip of my fingers on the edge of the table was a silent testament to my heightened alertness. He leaned slightly, the smell of his cologne, sharp, almost metallic, mingling with the faint aroma of office polish. "Just make sure you don't get lost in the numbers. Focus is important, but knowing where to look is even more critical." His gaze lingered, assessing, as if attempting to measure my capacity for both compliance and resistance. I felt a flush rise to my cheeks, awareness of every detail, the smoothness of the chair beneath me, the faint pressure of my ring against my palm, grounding me while my mind raced. As he moved away, I exhaled slowly, the tension in my shoulders slightly easing. He's testing me, I realized. He knows something is off, but he doesn't know how much I know. The thought sent a thrill of both fear and determination through my body, every nerve alert. By mid-morning, subtle disruptions began to appear. Files I had meticulously organized were slightly shifted, emails mysteriously marked as read, even my login sessions briefly interrupted. The signs were small, almost imperceptible to anyone else, but to me they were glaring indicators. Someone was watching. My skin prickled, and I felt the familiar tingling in my fingers, the physical echo of mental stress. I called Lydia during my lunch break, speaking in low tones in a quiet corner of the cafeteria. "They're on to me. Small things at first, but it's deliberate. Be careful. I could hear the click of her pen and the slight rustle of papers on the other end of the line, her presence steady and reassuring. I expected this, she replied, her voice calm but firm. Stay focused. Document everything. We need irrefutable evidence before moving. As we spoke, I could feel my heart rate accelerate, a rhythmic pounding against my ribs. My breathing deepened slightly, the tactile sensation of my hands pressing against the rough wood of the table grounding me. I noticed a colleague walking past, glancing toward me with mild curiosity, but I didn't flinch. The world felt sharper, more immediate, every sensation heightened, the taste of my sandwich, the warmth of the cup of coffee, the distant hum of ventilation. Each detail seemed magnified, an acute awareness of every moment as if the universe had contracted around my mission. Returning to my desk, I noticed a small envelope slipped under my keyboard. My stomach tightened as I picked it up, feeling the texture of the paper, the subtle weight in my hand. Inside, a typed note. Stop digging. Some truths are dangerous. The message was short, impersonal, yet it carried a tangible threat. I felt a shiver run down my spine, goosebumps rising along my arms. My fingers trembled slightly, the physical echo of fear and determination entwined. I pressed my lips together, trying to steady my breath. The office, which had been a familiar landscape, now felt like a stage set for a game of power and subterfuge. Every glance from a colleague, every raised eyebrow, every slight movement became a potential signal. My tactile senses, the pressure of my chair, the smooth surface of my desk, the cool metal of my laptop, became anchors in a rapidly shifting landscape. Despite the intimidation, I felt a strange exhilaration. The threat, the subtle surveillance, the undercurrent of danger, it all heightened my senses, sharpened my focus. I leaned forward, fingers tracing the outline of a document, absorbing every detail, every nuance. I will not be intimidated. I will see this through. The conviction was almost tangible, a physical resonance in my chest, spreading through my limbs like a quiet fire. By the end of the day, I had cataloged dozens of suspicious activities, each one a thread in a web that someone had worked tirelessly to conceal. My body ached from sitting, my eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets and emails, yet I felt a growing sense of control. I had turned fear into focus, the tactile and emotional sensations of tension and resolve coiling together into a single, driving force. As I left the office that evening, the weight of the day pressed against me, yet it was tempered by the certainty of my purpose. The cool evening air was sharp against my cheeks, the sounds of the city vivid and alive. Each step felt deliberate, resonant, a rhythm of defiance and determination. I could feel the muscles in my back stretch with each stride, the subtle vibration of my bag against my shoulder grounding me. In the quiet of my apartment later that night, I reviewed the day's findings once more. Every anomaly, every subtle act of resistance, every note of warning was logged, catalogued, and understood. My pulse gradually slowed, the adrenaline ebbing into a steady, resolute determination. They may try to stop me, but I have the truth, and I will not let it be buried. As I closed my laptop and leaned back, feeling the worn leather of the chair press against my spine, I knew the next step would be the most dangerous yet, confrontation with the inner circle responsible for the corruption. And yet, beneath the fear, a visceral, undeniable surge of courage resonated through my body. I will uncover this. I will not falter. Not now, not ever. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting striped shadows across my office floor. I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning and the distant murmur of colleagues beginning their day. Everything felt unusually tense, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I sat at my desk, the smooth surface cool beneath my palms, each finger pressing against the polished wood as though seeking stability. My laptop lay open, spreadsheets and emails still reflecting the evidence I had painstakingly gathered. Every document, every figure, every email thread was a small hammer striking against the walls of deception. The sound of heels clicking against the floor jolted me from my thoughts. Lydia had arrived, her presence sharp and focused, yet somehow calming. Her green eyes, alert and unwavering, scanned the room as she approached. I could feel the subtle pressure of her gaze on my back, a tactile awareness of being supported yet scrutinized. Her fingers brushed mine lightly as she passed me the folder of compiled evidence, a fleeting, grounding contact that reminded me I was not alone in this fight. "Are you ready?" she asked, voice low, almost a whisper, but with unmistakable resolve. I nodded, the muscles in my shoulders tensing in anticipation, the pulse in my neck throbbing with a mixture of fear and determination. Ready as I'll ever be, I thought, the thought solidifying in my chest like a tangible weight. We made our way to the executive meeting room, the corridors of the office stretching interminably before us. Every step echoed sharply against the marble floors, each click of our shoes reverberating like a drumbeat of impending confrontation. I could feel the subtle vibration of my briefcase against my hip, a constant reminder of the weight of the evidence I carried. My heart pounded in synchrony with each step, the rhythm of physical manifestation of both dread and resolve. The room was already filled with the senior management team. Mr. Caldwell, Ms. Reynolds, and the rest of the inner circle were seated, their expressions carefully neutral, though their eyes flickered with curiosity and suspicion as we entered. The air was thick, almost tactile in its intensity, the faint scent of expensive cologne mingling with the sterile aroma of the conference room. I felt the chair beneath me, solid and grounding, as I took my seat at the head of the table. I began the presentation with deliberate calm, my fingers brushing against the papers in front of me, the tactile sensation anchoring my focus. Over the past several months, I've been investigating discrepancies in our financial reports. I began, my voice steady but carrying the weight of authority. The findings suggest a series of deliberate manipulations involving offshore accounts and unauthorized transfers. My words hung in the air, each syllable reverberating with the gravity of the revelation. The room remained silent, the tension palpable. I could feel the weight of their gazes pressing against me, the subtle shifts in posture, the tightening of fists, the slight narrowing of eyes. They know something is coming, but they cannot anticipate the extent. My fingers traced the edge of a spreadsheet, the smooth paper grounding me as I continued. As I outlined the evidence, I observed the subtle reactions around the room. Mr. Caldwell's jaw clenched, a vein throbbing in his temple, while Ms. Reynolds's eyes darted to her notes, fingers tapping nervously against the leather cover. The inner circle was unraveling before my eyes, each small gesture a crack in the facade of control they had maintained for so long. Lydia projected additional documents onto the screen, highlighting patterns of illicit transfers and shell company activity. The visual presentation made the connections undeniable, the numbers forming a clear map of corruption. I could feel the collective tension in the room, almost as if it were a living, breathing entity pressing against my skin. My palms were slightly damp, the smooth surface of the table grounding me as I maintained eye contact with each individual. "You've all seen the evidence," I said, my voice deliberate, measured. "These are not mistakes. They are intentional, coordinated actions designed to misappropriate company funds. And I intend to see that accountability is enforced." My words were deliberate, each one carrying the weight of moral certainty and professional authority. The room was silent, the tension almost suffocating, the air thick with unspoken questions and rising panic. Mr. Caldwell finally spoke, his voice low, controlled, but with an edge of desperation. "You don't understand the consequences," he said, leaning forward, the smell of his cologne sharp against my senses. "Exposing this will destroy the company's reputation, affect thousands of employees. Are you prepared to bear that responsibility?" My fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the table, the leather biting softly into my skin as a grounding reminder. I met his gaze evenly, feeling the full weight of their scrutiny, yet my resolve was unwavering. "I understand the risks," I replied, each word deliberate, precise. "But concealment of wrongdoing is far more dangerous than exposure. Integrity cannot be compromised, even under threat." The words resonated in the room, the physicality of my conviction palpable, the air almost vibrating with the tension of truth confronting power. The senior management exchanged rapid, anxious glances, their composure faltering. One by one, the cracks appeared, whispered admissions, hesitant gestures, eyes avoiding my own. The carefully constructed veneer of authority began to crumble under the undeniable clarity of evidence. My body felt electrified, a visceral surge of adrenaline and moral vindication, the tactile sensations of chair, table, and papers anchoring me to the moment. By the end of the meeting, the path forward was clear. An independent audit would be initiated, the findings reported to the board, and corrective actions enforced. The inner circle sat in stunned silence, their previous confidence shattered, the weight of exposure pressing down upon them. I felt the cool air of the room against my cheeks, the faint vibration of my phone in my pocket, a reminder that the world outside was still turning, still waiting for justice. As Lydia and I left the room, the tension gradually eased, replaced by a quiet, profound satisfaction. Each step down the corridor, the click of our shoes, the subtle sway of our bodies, carried with it a sense of accomplishment. We had faced intimidation, threats, and the weight of authority, yet the truth had prevailed. My hands tingled, the tactile sensations of movement and air grounding me as I exhaled deeply, a wave of relief washing through my chest. That evening, I sat at my desk once more, the city lights casting a warm glow across the room. I reviewed the day's events, the reactions, the subtle shifts in power and influence. My fingers brushed over the documents, the smooth paper a tactile reminder of the journey we had undertaken. The physical sensations, the heightened awareness of every detail, reinforced the emotional resonance of the day. We did it. The truth is no longer hidden. And as the night deepened, I felt an undeniable, visceral satisfaction, the culmination of fear, courage, and relentless determination. The confrontation had not been easy, but it had been necessary. The tactile and emotional intensity of the day, the interplay of power and moral certainty, would stay with me long after the office lights dimmed. This is only the beginning of holding power accountable, and I am ready. The morning after the confrontation, the office felt transformed, though the subtle undercurrent of tension still lingered like a shadow. I entered the building with cautious optimism, each step on the polished floor a tactile reminder of the battles fought and the fragile victory earned. My hands rested lightly on my laptop bag, the leather strap smooth under my fingers, grounding me as I approached my desk. The city beyond the windows shimmered in the rising sun, casting long shafts of light that cut through the office like the first rays of justice. The emails had begun pouring in even before I settled, colleagues expressing tentative support, some in disbelief, others quietly proud. Each notification carried a weight of validation, a subtle but powerful recognition that the risks we had taken were not in vain. I felt a tingling in my fingertips as I navigated through the messages, the tactile feedback from the keyboard amplifying the intensity of each revelation. My heart beat steadily, a physical echo of the quiet satisfaction settling in my chest. Lydia joined me shortly after, her presence calm yet purposeful. Her green eyes sparkled with a mixture of relief and triumph as she handed me a folder containing official notices. An independent audit would proceed immediately, the senior executives implicated would be placed on leave pending investigation, and a company-wide briefing would take place that afternoon. My fingers traced the edges of the folder, absorbing the cool texture as if to affirm the reality of the moment. "This is it," she said quietly, almost reverently. "The truth is finally being recognized." I nodded, the words resonating with every fiber of my being. The tactile sensation of the folder in my hands, the faint rustle of its papers, and the rhythmic hum of the office machinery all converged to anchor me in this turning point. By noon, the conference room was filled with staff and board members. The room was alive with murmurs, the faint scent of polished wood mingling with nervous anticipation. I stood at the head of the table, the smooth surface cool beneath my palms, and began addressing the assembly. Over the past several months, evidence of financial misconduct was uncovered. Thanks to the diligence and courage of our team, we are now in a position to ensure accountability and transparency. My voice was steady, each word deliberate, carrying the weight of both authority and moral conviction. The board members and staff listened intently, the room charged with a palpable mixture of relief, curiosity, and latent anger. I observed the subtle shifts in body language, crossed arms relaxing, eyes meeting mine with newfound respect, slight nods of approval. Each movement was a tactile and visual confirmation of the change in the atmosphere, a testament to the impact of confronting truth with courage. As the briefing concluded, the reactions were immediate. Whispers of admiration spread through the corridors, some hesitant, others more overt. I felt the subtle brush of colleagues' hands on mine in congratulatory gestures, the warmth of their touch reinforcing the emotional and physical resonance of the moment. It was a symphony of human connection, each interaction layered with complex emotions of trust, respect, and recognition. Later that day, I met privately with the CEO and board. The implications of the audit were discussed in meticulous detail, the tactile sensations of handling documents, clicking pens, and shifting chairs providing a grounding counterpoint to the intellectual rigor required. "Your handling of this situation has been exemplary," the CEO remarked, his voice calm yet resonant with approval. "You demonstrated integrity, courage, and leadership under immense pressure. The company recognizes your contributions." The words sank into my chest, each syllable a physical vibration, a tangible reinforcement of my perseverance. Yet the consequences extended beyond professional recognition. The implicated executives faced formal investigations, potential termination, and legal repercussions. The emotional weight of witnessing their downfall was palpable, a mixture of justice and the bittersweet complexity of human frailty. My fingers tingled as I signed off on reports, the tactile act a reminder of the power of action combined with principle. By evening, I walked through the office once more, the atmosphere transformed. The subtle tension of fear and uncertainty had given way to cautious optimism and renewed focus. My steps echoed in the empty corridors, each contact of heel against floor a physical reminder of the journey traversed. I paused by the window, feeling the cool glass under my palms. The city sprawled beneath me like a testament to resilience and courage. I reflected on the tactile and emotional experiences of the past weeks, the pounding of adrenaline, the shiver of fear, the visceral thrill of discovery, the grounding sensations of paper, keyboard, and chair. Every sensation had been amplified by the stakes, each heartbeat a rhythmic pulse connecting body, mind, and moral conviction. This is what leadership feels like, I thought, the awareness of physical presence intertwined with ethical responsibility resonating through my limbs. The days that followed saw a gradual, deliberate restructuring of company operations. New policies were implemented, internal audits regularized, and a culture of transparency emphasized. I felt the tangible weight of responsibility pressing against my shoulders, yet it was tempered by the satisfaction of ethical victory. My hands traced the smooth edges of new documents, each signature a tactile affirmation of accountability and justice. One evening, as the office lights dimmed and the city outside glimmered with life, I allowed myself a rare moment of reflection. The tactile sensation of my chair, the cool glass of the windows, the distant hum of activity below, all converged into a profound sense of accomplishment. Fear, tension, and courage are intertwined. Integrity, once upheld, becomes a tangible force that shapes reality itself. In that quiet space, I realized the true magnitude of the journey, the humiliation, the threats, the psychological strain, and the tactile intensity of every step had led to a transformation not only in the company but within myself. I had navigated fear, embraced responsibility, and emerged with both professional and personal growth, each sensation etched into memory. The story of a secretary who uncovered a financial scandal became a quiet legend within the company. Yet for me, the narrative was not about recognition or reward. It was about the visceral, tactile, and emotional journey of confronting injustice and asserting integrity. Each sensation, each heartbeat, each physical and psychological nuance had contributed to the outcome, forging resilience, courage, and moral authority. As the night deepened, I stood by the window, feeling the cool glass, the distant vibration of a city, the subtle brush of air against my skin, and the steady beat of my own heart. The confrontation was over, but the lessons endured. Courage is not an abstract concept. It is felt, lived, and embodied in every moment of resistance. And with that understanding, I knew that no challenge, no threat, no shadow of intimidation could ever diminish the clarity and resolve that had carried me through the storm.